Grafton School Board meeting to order. Let's all rise and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we're at that point in the meeting now. Any public comment? You see, yes. Go ahead, Renee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Renee Riddle, here tonight representing the Grafton Education Foundation. We've made a commitment this year to send a representative to every board meeting so that you can know what we are up to and we will know what you are up to. So I just wanted to fill you in on what's been going on. We're kind of wrapping up one of our major fundraising campaigns, which we call the Seeds to Harvest campaign. That's our direct mail campaign. So far through the end of November, we've raised $8,816. So that's a little bit down from last year, but we still get a lot of year-end contributions, so we're hoping to have a final push in the final weeks of December for that. Another fundraiser that we have that was a little bit earlier was Portraits in the Park, raised about $1,000 with that, with 16 families participating. But our big fundraiser, which I know you all know about, thanks to Joe, because I hear you have a contribution for us. But that is the 7th annual now. That's the Super Bowl. And once again, we have U.S. Bank as our named sponsor, so we're excited about that, U.S. Bank GF's Super Bowl. It will be at the Cedars Bowling Alley in Cedarburg again on January 26th. Mark your calendar. It's always the week before the other Super Bowl, the NFL Super Bowl. So no football that weekend. But I'm sure a lot of you know it's just a great evening of soup sampling, bowling, live music, auctions. We're going to have an online auction again, so even if you can't participate, so for folks that might have a basketball tournament or something else going on, they can always participate through the online raffle, which is really exciting. And then a big portion of that, in fact, about a quarter of the money we raised for the Super Bowl comes through these little babies. I'm going to show them to the crowd. These are the magic tickets. These are the reverse raffle for a grand prize of $10,000. It's always very exciting when the winner is there in person, which they were last year. So we just encourage you, yeah, right there, yeah. So look for those sales to be ongoing. We have these tickets available in every school office and the district office. I have some with me tonight, so you can come hit me up. That's fine. We can even take credit cards through our Square reader, so we make it super easy for you. Tickets are $100, but you can split it 4 ways. So get 4 people together, each put in $25, and then every 20th ticket is a winner. So there's all sorts of prizes you can win through that. Hopefully you saw us in the Christmas parade. We were marching to represent the Grafton Education Foundation in the Grafton Christmas Parade this year. And we also have exciting news that the Grafton Education Foundation is going to continue funding the 4th grade kindness retreats. That was something that started as when we took over the Color Blast. Part of that reciprocal arrangement was to fund the kindness retreat, and we kind of had to make a decision year by year. It's outside of our normal grant process, and it's more of a gift, but we're excited to tell you that we can gift it for next year. And then I just want to do a final shout out to all the teachers here at Grafton High School for their Casual Friday. They've been they donate money, donate $1 to GEF so that they can wear jeans to school. And there's a lot of participation for that, and we got some fun pictures. They're on our Facebook page if you want to check it out. So we appreciate all of your support. We appreciate you spreading the news about all the good deeds that the Grafton Education Foundation does, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Renee, for your passion and for the work that you do and your attendance. It is good to see you here in the GEF. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Bellander, and I am just here as a parent. I was at the last board meeting where some discussion was taking place regarding some potential facility usage changes. And first I want to thank Superintendent Nelson. You were very kind in providing all of the documentation that you had gathered from surrounding communities that you used to put together that proposal. And as it relates to the fees, to assess for facility usage, I think they are more than quite fair and quite in line with how other school districts have assessed charges for similar use of their facilities. What does concern me greatly, however, is the availability to those facilities. It is well established that to develop as an athlete or an academic, one must continually improve their skill sets in those fields of interest, whether that be strengthening the muscles, the mind, or the voice. That development happens in what most of us would call the off-season, a time to hone in on strengthening burgeoning skills, learning new ones, or maintaining your existing strengths. For most students, that off-season is summer. Failure to continue that development can lead to a loss of skills and learning. As educational leaders, you are probably well aware of the challenges summer poses to students. The Northwest Evaluation Association, in their 2018 research that determined by 7th grade, 36% of all reading gains and 50% of all math gains were lost during the summer months. That can also be the case, I would claim, for all in-school gains, whether they be academic, artistic, or athletic, unless we as parents and officials provide as many opportunities to continue with that off-season mentality. I, as an adult, support providing all students access to these opportunities, but as a parent of a student athlete, I can only speak from the experience of my child's personal interests. I'm a fervent believer that all student athletes develop skill sets that not only provide success in school, but throughout their adult lives. Teamwork, cooperation, persistence, practice, patience, time management, personal responsibility, the realization that in spite of all of your hard work and your best intentions, failure does happen. But getting back up, trying again, is a true measure of success. These are just a few of the characteristics of a student athlete. To know that the board is considering significantly curtailing the availability of resources needed for our student athletes is something that I would ask the board to sincerely and thoughtfully reconsider. To limit access to the facility during off-season or summer to Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, is in essence eliminating any non-working or non-teacher from being able to support these student athletes. No evening or weekend hours means that working parents and students who may have summer daytime jobs will have no access to facilities that rightly should be available to them. I know my child is graduating. My child is Hannah Bellinger, who is a senior this year. And the changes implemented by this board will not personally affect Hannah. But I know that my daughter was 8 or 9 years old, and she saw the work effort that her role models, Rachel Hankey and Sarah Eichler, put in, and it inspired her. The thousands of hours of practice in the gym dedicated to a goal, even a goal that she might not ever obtain, is something that we as adults should not dismiss. To know in the last summer that my daughter was here in high school, she spent more time at Homestead's facility training to reach her goal, is something that I think is shameful. As a parent and someone who can personally attest to the benefits of chasing a goal, I respectfully ask that this board consider providing evening and weekend hours for the organizations supporting our students.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda items. We have two items there, the approval of the minutes from November 26th and the statement of receipts and expenditures for the month of November. Motion for such approval. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye? Aye. Opposed? And that passes. All right, let's move on to the action items. Jeff, Superintendent report.
Yes, so it's our final week of school for 2018. So as we get ready to close out 2018, I believe we have much to be thankful for in our district. We have a supportive community that's allowed us to remodel and add on to our facilities. We've supported parents and students that partner with us to improve student achievement, as was referenced last month when we had reached DPI's highest achievement of significantly exceeds expectations, and those are just a few of the examples that make Grafton a great place to be. So, on many levels, 2018 was a great year for our district. I'm excited as superintendent to look forward to 2019 and discussions as I look back on meeting notes from last year and what we were discussing, and now as I look at what we're discussing this year, I look forward to seeing even what 2019 discussion items will be as we move forward and so forth. So with that being said, some of the official items I want to talk about is, speaking of some of those great things, is our autos program. Once again, last week on Wednesday during a late start, our entire senior automotive class sat for the 2019 Auto Dealers Association of Metro Milwaukee Technicians of Tomorrow competition qualification test. And this year the Adam group, what they did is they used the ASE student certification test as the competition qualifier. This gives students a patch that can either help them make more money at their current job or possibly even get a job in the field. And we passed 18 out of the 19 senior students who took the exam. Each one of the passing students earns $750 from the Wisconsin DPI CTE incentive grant for the next school year. So that will be going into our tech ed area. And Grafton senior automotive students placed highest on this test in the greater southeastern Wisconsin area. And our top two students are moving on to the hands-on competition held at the Greater Milwaukee Auto Show on March 1st. From there, they would possibly be able to qualify for nationals. So we want to give a congratulations to Matt Klein and Orion Lukablus for their efforts and scoring the highest out of all of our students. And we wish them well as they move on to the Greater Milwaukee Auto Show. Talked to Carl, and he's very proud of them and all of the students. And even the one student who had a tough day on that day has an opportunity to retake the test a couple times to get that certification. So he's confident that all of his students will receive that, as well as some other certifications as they'll go along. But he'll start working with those students looking ahead to March 1st, and they'll be in here on weekends getting ready for that. So congratulations to those students. And then a reminder for everyone that our 4K information night is held on Thursday, January 24th at 6:30. It's at Woodview. The priority open enrollment window is from January 24th to February 8th. Parents can enroll students at either the information night or at the district office during that time frame. And then new for the 2019-20 school year, administration is proposing to provide midday transportation from all daycares in Grafton to allow 4K students that are attending our schools. So basically, after the morning session, no matter where your boundary line is, we would be picking up, no matter where we will transport to that preferred daycare. If you were an afternoon session, we would pick up at that daycare for school regardless of the boundary lines. So it's an exception that we're making, something that we've seen this year as we've redone our boundary lines, moving from 3 schools to 2 schools that we think may have impacted our 4K enrollment. But it is an exception that the administration is recommending, so we're making the board aware of it. If there's no concerns, it's something that we start publicizing as we have our 4K information night and in all of our informational materials that we'll be sending out to everyone. And if there's any concerns, let me know.
But I think that's a great idea.
Oh, good.
Because I know it has been an issue for people who did want to come and have this transportation.
Yep, we've heard that.
Good idea.
Yep. So Topher's worked the right way. We believe at this point there'll be no additional cost, but we've looked at that as well and how that would impact transportation and so forth for students.
So not have had any concerns? No concerns. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, we've talked about that
Yes.
in concept, but now as we get ready to head into that enrollment time, bringing that back to the table. And then final reminder of the school board spring election that occurs on April 2nd, that the candidate filing deadline is Wednesday, January 2nd at 5. And if not, running for re-election, non-candidacy papers are due by December 21st. And then also, it's the Wisconsin DPI proclamation for school guards. So the proclamation says, whereas Wisconsin's adult school crossing guards provide an invaluable service in helping to ensure the safe passage of our youngest, most vulnerable pedestrians, children walking between home and school, and whereas adult school crossing guards typically serve with a dedication that discounts the rigors of harsh weather, split shifts, and heavy traffic, and whereas for more than 5 decades, adult school crossing guards have served communities across Wisconsin, and that service has helped to drive down the rates of young pedestrian deaths and injuries despite increases in traffic flow. And whereas adult school crossing guards add to the effectiveness of the student safety patrol members with whom they often serve and whose activity they help direct. And whereas adult school crossing guards help reinforce in the minds of the young people they assist the importance of traffic hazard identification and safe street crossing behavior, therefore be resolved that January 14th through 18th, 2019 be declared Adult School Crossing Guard Recognition Week in the state of Wisconsin. So we want to recognize them in that way. We'll have some things on social media, reminding our parents to thank our crossing guards as well. We thank them every day, but especially during that week, we want to recognize them for an important role they do in keeping our kids safe as they walk to and from school. And then finally, we had something that Ms. Bellinger is very near and dear to her heart on Saturday night. Congratulations to GHS senior Hannah Bellinger for passing Rachel Hinkie on Saturday night to become the all-time leading scorer in GHS girls basketball history with 1,447 career points. So big, exciting news on Saturday night. I've spoken with Kevin Moore today. We're going to be inviting Hannah to next month's board meeting. We'll make a official recognition of her at that time. We'll have her on the agenda. He was going to be talking to Hannah and your husband today after school, but we will be looking forward to officially recognize them, have her at the agenda. In that short time frame, Saturday night to tonight, it wasn't appropriate to try and rush something, but she will be on the agenda for our January board meeting. So congratulations to her and our girls basketball team. We'll look forward to recognizing her in that way then. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Any questions? Good, and certainly in advance of that meeting, congratulations to your daughters and all of her persistence and hard work. All right, let's move on to committee reports. We had a curriculum committee meeting on the 10th of December.
Yes, and on that agenda, there was one item. It was on a proposal or a presentation on a one-to-one initiative, and it was just a presentation giving the board some information about the possibility, and they were going to do further research, but it looked really positive.
Okay, and the policy committee also met.
Yes, the policy committee also met on December 10th. Our agenda items were we had a second reading on 3 of the policy sections, the bylaws, which are the 0 policies, administration, which is the 1,000, and relations, which is the 9,000. And we also had a first reading of the professional staff, which is the 30,000 policy. So everything's going well so far. Administration is doing a great job as far as vetting a lot of those before they get to us. So the policies are coming very clean. Just a few minor things, and then mostly a lot of questions that are coming from the policy committee back to administration for clarification. So we're right on schedule with where we need to be on that. The other agenda item that we had was the 830 public use of facilities policy. So that is agenda item G tonight. So we will be asking the full board to do a first reading of that tonight so that we can go through. It's been in the policy committee for a while. So we would like to get that in front of the whole board, present that, ask for any kind of feedback, questions, clarification, and then we will take that back to the policy committee on the 14th, based on what we hear tonight and up to the 7th. So we'll speak a little bit more of that as we get to agenda item G. Our next meeting for the policy committee will be January 14th. Our agenda items will be a second reading of the professional staff policies, as well as a first reading of the support staff, the 40,000s. And then we will also have on the agenda then a final review of the 830 policy facility use so that we can present that on the 20th.
right. Any questions? We'll get to further discussion, I'm sure, on Rule 830, item G on the agenda.
Yes.
So, Kennedy Elementary School presentation.
Yes, so we're getting into the time of the year where we will start having schools come and present both some of the new initiatives that are occurring as well as about their school goals. And Kennedy is leading us off this year, so I will welcome Dr. Henderson and some students and staff and parents that are here tonight. So Dr. Henderson.
Yes, first of all, thank you for welcoming us to the school board meeting tonight, and thank you to the staff members and students and parents who have come as well this evening. A few things. We're going to be featuring our newly improved building, talking about our focus on growth and learning, and also having an opportunity to feature our students and staff through our Student Council Club, which is up and running full force for the school year. First of all, a little bit about our school. Currently have 463 students, 57 staff members, 74,000 square feet, which is up from the original 34,000 square feet prior to the facilities referendum. We're really excited about our new additions and the remodeling, the exterior site improvements and everything that's happening outdoors, and also the safety, security, energy efficiency upgrades that we've been able to take advantage of too. Our theme for the year is United as One and Learning Together. It's featured on our t-shirts, and it's something that we're trying to live every single day with our decisions and how we work together. A couple of pictures. I was able to take some parallel pictures between December of last year and then December of this year. So a few things to go over. Last year, we literally had bulldozers outside of the classroom windows. This year, we have a beautiful paved play area. Last year, there was a skeleton of a gym and major site work happening. This year, you can see the completed product. Last year, you could see the bones in place for the new addition, bridging the way between the old section and the gymnasium. You could see that we had cranes on site, major construction. And this is from that end of the building over by the LMC. You can see how nicely that has come together as a project. Our interior spaces are beautiful. We've been able to open them up for community use and also for school use as well. The gyms are used extensively for volleyball during the evenings, gymnastics, and also youth basketball on the weekends, as well as other functions as well. We're really enjoying our large common spaces. They're gorgeous. The outdoors look incredible as well, and we're working on our site improvements. The inside is beautiful. Here's a feature of our new LMC. You can see the natural sunlight and all the space that it gives us. Again, this is a community space as we look onward to the flex area and opportunities for scouts, other groups to use those spaces. This is an interesting picture because it shows the cafeteria between 3 and 4 months ago. And so this is, the picture on the right is from Saturday when I was in there. But you can see the amount of work that's happened just in the past few months. And this is a representation of the unpacking and all of the work that occurred during the last few weeks of summer and as we launched the school year to go from literally boxes and equipment everywhere to a fully functioning elementary school. And it's a testament to the hard work of the skilled people who are working on the facility. It's also to our staff members for the hard muscle work to organize the school. And it was really an all-hands-on-deck effort. We do have a lot of new aspects for the school year. I'd like to highlight a few of them. The physical building on the site, the routines and procedures that pick up and drop off we've been working through, curriculum elements, the elementary schedule, new faces and names in isolation individually, but then also the combinations of students and families together, and then staff teams and teaching configurations. And what this really comes down to is a new school culture that we are establishing and working towards. It means that we are listening, that we are seeking to work together, that we did our very best to anticipate, but then also there are areas that we didn't fully anticipate. And it's caused us to listen, to reflect, to go back in what we thought was an original plan and to improve upon that. And so I'm thankful for our staff and families for working together with that feedback aspect, allowing us to keep moving forward. But we really are working on that new culture and coming together as a school so that we truly can be united as one and learning together. As a principal, what this means to me, each day I come to work, is that all kids need a support system within their school. There's always something that we can do. If the situation is difficult, we can work together to find a next step that works, that's positive. That all of us continue to grow over time, that we're all learners, that we should work hard, have fun, and make a difference, and that we always seek to make a connection with the kids. Remember that they're all our students. In the next couple of slides, we're going to be talking about goal setting and high levels of learning for all kids as well. This is a testament to that. Provide access as able. What can the child do? Include him or her in the core curriculum. Make decisions to give access. And it's hard work, but it's the right work because it provides great access and opportunity to all kids, and it's our duty as a public school to do that. This year we have excellent alignment and coherence with our district steps and also with our school-related efforts. We have a TLC 3-year action plan that features actions across assessment, standards, and instruction, a superintendent's district dashboard which outlines some goals for us as a district perspective, align school goals, and then also align teacher practices so that we're all pulling together in the same direction. It's not perfect yet, but we're moving in the right direction with coming together with this. And it's been refreshing to have that district vision and that perspective that allows us to rally underneath a larger system and work together. For our goals for the school year, several of them were outlined when we met as a board over the course of the summer. But we're looking hard at that 3rd grade reading goal for the forward exam. Kennedy has had great success over the last few years with the forward exam in 3rd grade reading, and we're looking to continue that. For example, this year, we're looking at 78% of 3rd graders scoring in the proficient or advanced ranges. And I'll talk a little bit more to unpack that goal. We're also looking at students mastering essential grade level standards in reading and math. It ties back to the work with the TLC, our school-wide leadership teams, working on all students mastering essential standards. Map growth by student in reading and math. F&P text level growth, so that all students are demonstrating at least 1 year of growth with their reading. Then there's also a behavior and PBIS component as well, so that all students are responding to the Eagle Way through universal supports. And they were able to rally around those kids who are struggling by providing Tier 2 interventions such as check-in and check-out. We're going to break down Goal 1 a little bit more, and with this representation you can see a historical perspective of 3rd grade forward exams in the area of reading. The blue graphs represent Kennedy, starting from the 15-16 school year all the way through the past school year, 17-18, and then the goal year of the 18-19 school year. And you can see that the blue lines, our percent of proficient and advanced students continues to rise over the past 3 years. In 15 and 16, we were 59.2% proficient or advanced, well below the district score, or district average of 66.9. And over the past few years, we have closed that gap, exceeded it. And our trajectory is to project this goal out for 18-19 so that 78% of kids in 3rd grade are proficient or advanced in an ELA forward score. You can see the forward scores for the state in the gray bars. We're going to continue to surpass that and continue growing for 3rd grade as well. A lot of our work this year is working through an RTI at Work pyramid. We were able to start this work by attending a PLC Institute in Madison, and then a group of staff members and administrators attended another conference in Michigan where we examined our school-wide practices and our teacher team practices. Thus far this year, we have worked to establish a guiding coalition with our school-wide leadership team, which is meeting monthly and also has breakout meetings throughout the school year. We have formed collaborative teacher teams and have committed to team norms. And part of this is through the new schedule, which has allowed us to have that common planning time each and every day, and those opportunities exist regularly. We have created time for collaboration, and we're working on building that culture of collective responsibility where we're ensuring high levels of learning for all students. And when we look at the population of kids at Kennedy Elementary School, we understand that every single one of them, 460 plus students, are going to need to function successfully and independently as adults. There isn't one of them at that school who will be expected to not do that. That is why we believe high levels of learning for all is absolutely essential for our kids. For our past 100-day plan, we have done a lot of work to create team norms, develop team SLOs, at the teacher level that align to the school goals and the district goals. So there's that unification of all of us pulling together in the same direction. Our grade levels have worked to establish some by-student, by-standard tracking tools, and those are in their infancy in some cases, but are also coming to fruition where we're seeing teacher practices that are aligning to what we want across the district level. We've also identified and selected some critical power standards and understanding what we want students to actually learn over the course of the school year, and diving deep into that with our instruction and also assessments. And finally, engaging in CFA work for common formative assessments and beginning that student data analysis process. And we're excited about some of the tools that we have in place and also the development of those tools that have occurred in the past couple weeks and in fact moving forward. For our current 100-day plan, we're focusing on each of our teacher teams cycling through the CFA process, IDing that essential standard, processing and deeply understanding it, establishing a proficiency scale so that we know what mastery looks like, teaching, assessing, and then analyzing data collaboratively, and then figuring out what we're actually going to do with that data and our next steps for grouping students and providing instructional opportunities. But we're really excited about this level of growth and the prospect of this over the next few months. We're asked to provide an update on our elementary schedule and a few bullet points about this. It does provide excellent instructional opportunities throughout the day. We're on a 6-day rotation and not on a Monday through Friday, and that was pointed out through some of our prior scheduling meetings and everything. Overall, there's some very high quality opportunities embedded, but there's also a few places that we're troubleshooting. For example, teachers had some desires to shift a few things around. They're finding that certain times of the day were tight and that they had extra time perhaps in other areas. And so Michael and I have been able to talk across the grade levels to navigate some of those conversations so that we can be responsive to the teacher voice, but also ensure fidelity for our curriculum minutes. What it all comes down to for me as a principal is making sure that we have high quality lessons in place, that we're focusing on power standards, that we're working together to analyze data, and then also that we're responding to that as well to meet the needs of all students. And ultimately, we want these things implemented with a great deal of skill, depth, and quality. Also, what it comes down to is what's happening in the classrooms, and I took a few snapshots here. Our teachers are working closely to provide universal instruction. We're breaking things down into small groups. Our teachers care. They're literally on the floor with the students, making connections with them. We have a strong focus on literacy. The bottom right-hand picture shows a 5K music concert involving that parent voice and featuring student learning across a wide range of areas. But on a day-to-day basis, our lessons and our focus and the quality and care that our teachers are showing and the diligence of our students has been excellent, and I'm looking forward to continued growth. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to some of our staff members and students for a brief breakout about Student Council.
All right, so good evening. Most of you know who I am, but I'm Shereen Mortag, and I am one of Kennedy Elementary School Student Council advisors, and along with me is Susie Beatty and Margene Westfall. And then we also brought along our president and vice president this year, Jacob Nestler and Callie Tagliapietra. Ms. Pam Newtons was not able to attend tonight, but she is one of our advisors as well. So this year's Student Council at Kennedy Elementary School consists of 48 members. They are grades 4th and 5th. To become a member, the students are asked to fill out a self-nomination form as to why they feel they would make a good leader at Kennedy Elementary School. We meet once a month on the third Thursday of every month from 3:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. So the students know that when they join Student Council, they're making a commitment to attend every month. Our Kennedy School Student Council, we believe that we build leadership through meaningful involvement. We build decision-making and also opportunities for public speaking. We instill positive role model behaviors in all of our kids, and they know that's an expectation, and they do an awesome job at it. We plan enriching school activities for all students to participate in, as well as community-based projects to give back to the community and serve our community. So our priorities for the year, we just completed, our kickoff for our Kennedy Elementary School Student Council was our Kids to Kids Toy Drive, which is sponsored by CAPCO and WTMJ Radio. It was an opportunity for the students to demonstrate their leadership school-wide. That was our very first community-based service project. Our next school event that we're going to be planning is our Kennedy Elementary School Book Swap. So that's going to be an exciting opportunity to get books into the hands of kids and new books, and to encourage that enjoyment and love of reading. And then I'm going to turn it over to our president and vice president. They're going to talk a little bit more about our Kids to Kids Toy Drive.
The pictures on the slide are from our Kids to Kids Toy Drive. To have a successful toy drive, we made posters, sent home letters, and had announcements over the PA.
Each morning we go to each homeroom to collect the toys brought to school. We kept track on a data sheet.
We had an incentive for the classroom that brought in the most toys. The class would win an ice cream sundae party.
On December 13th, we had an all-school assembly in the gym. Representatives from CAPCO and WTMJ Radio were there. Gil from the Chinooks and Roscoe from the Milwaukee Admirals were there at our assembly as well.
After the assembly, student council members were able to help load the truck with all of the toys.
In total, we collected 672 new toys to brighten children's holidays here in our Ozaukee County.
We had a winning tie with Mr. Schultz and Mr. Perry's 4th grade classes.
However, because everyone's amazing generosity, every student in every classroom at Kennedy will also be receiving a small treat after the holidays.
Does anyone have any questions about our student council?
Any questions? I don't have a question. I do have a comment. I was sitting at work listening to the radio on my computer, and I was thrilled and extremely surprised to hear Kennedy Elementary School and of the great work that you guys led and did on the district's behalf. That is absolutely phenomenal, and I appreciate always hearing about great things, but more especially when you hear about them on the radio and you're not expecting them. It was phenomenal. It was just absolutely wonderful.
It was also surprising to hear from 3 people who texted me, "I heard you on the radio," and I'm like, what? I did not know that when I was talking into the phone that she was going to be putting that on the radio. But that was fun.
I was going into the Rotary lunch, and I had texted her and Craig that I'd heard them, and the speech to text did not come up with Miss Beatty's correct name, and so she wondered who I was emailing. So it's sort of, I'm like, oh, that's text to speech. That's the speech to text feature didn't work so well, but it was. I heard it was very cool.
So
yeah, but it went 3 times, 3 different people, 3 different times during the day.
That's cool.
It went off, so we were definitely heard. It was wonderful.
So what is your favorite experience so far about Student Council?
Well, I like how we all get together and discuss new activities that we can do with the whole school.
Excellent.
I like when we made the posters, so I still wish we could have 2 meetings a month.
Good for you. Any other questions?
What's your next activity coming up?
Well, we're doing a book swap, and I think that's really cool because everyone can get a new book, and I love reading.
Good for you. Yes, thank you very much. Excellent work. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you. Thank you. So this concludes the Kennedy Elementary School presentation. Thank you to our students, for our families, for our staff members for coming. And I just want to tell the school board that we're very thankful to be here this evening, and just thanks for the opportunity to present to you this evening. Thank you.
Any questions?
I was just curious, what is encore time?
Encore time represents art, music, phy-ed, and then library. It's a 45-minute block each day that occurs for the grade levels.
How about the implementation of Bridges, right? How's that going?
Yes. So Bridges is our new math resource. I could turn it over to a first grade teacher perspective, but from an administrator perspective, we are seeing a lot of really great things when it comes to math language and on-task opportunities to demonstrate math instruction and math learning. The opportunities that the kids have are focused back on essential power standards. They are rigorous, they are rich. There's a level of depth with the instruction, and part of that comes with the level of language within the instructional resources. To plan a Bridges lesson takes an incredible amount of time because it's so text-rich. But through that text comes excellent questions, the correct teaching techniques, ways to differentiate, ways to rephrase, and then the right ways to present rigorous math problems. But we're very pleased with it thus far. Teacher perspective?
The kids love it. I love teaching it. It's a lot of preparation, but the kids love it, and there's so many different ways to do things, and the kids are really excited. They want to do math, and the way we have it set up, we do number corner, which is a portion of it, and we do it for about a half hour to start the kids off, and then we have problems and investigations where it's the main part of the lesson, and then the kids work independently or with partners. Just great program.
I have a question about sword time. Can you talk a little bit about how you're utilizing the sword time now that you have blocks of math and reading and writing?
Right. So each grade level is using it a little bit differently at this point, but what we are committing to as a school is to provide enrichment and also intervention opportunities for kids at least twice per week. So what that means is that we are going through and we are targeting students who are in need of supports or students who may need a boost. And through our planning, we're seeking to provide those supports to kids that many times. Each grade level is at a different place right now, and students are working through a variety of opportunities. But like we had talked about with the alignment and coherence, we're trying to pull together so that we can have that unified direction and ultimately share students across grade levels, across classrooms, because we're recognizing that the differentiation needs for kids are great, and if we can use those efficiencies within our teams, that we can give kids better opportunities. Ideally with the intervention supports, the actual opportunity occurs daily. So you can see that the sword time is within there each day. But when it comes to targeting the instruction, that's what we're going for as a school at this point, at least 2.
How is the Raptor system? I mean, now that that's in place, how is that working and the benefits of that?
The Raptor's been going very well. We anticipated longer backups and longer processing time, but what we're finding out is that our visitors who are arriving are able to be scanned very quickly and shooting out the badges within seconds and people are on their way. At first, there was like a procedural hiccup where people didn't quite understand the follow-through of the procedure. But then with Stacy and Jamie and Jenny in the office, we just talk through it. Visitors present their ID badges, and they're on their way to their volunteer or visiting function through the school. It's going very well. Honestly, I haven't had one complaint about Raptor, but instead we've heard people giving thanks for us keeping the kids safe, the school environment more secure. Going very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sorgi. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, item item D.
And this is obviously no reflection on the excitement of item D, but you are all welcome to leave. Thank you for coming this evening, for presenting. We appreciate that. I'm sure it's not personal, Topher.
Not at all.
Susie.
All right, the ESSA required school level reporting.
Yes, I wanted to bring to the board's attention a new requirement through the Every Student Succeeds Act for reporting. We are now required to report our expenditures per student for each of our schools. It gets broken up by both federal and then district and local funding sources. And so we have just recently reported this year's budget expenditures per school and the amount by student. I put a timeline into the memo showing that the actual expenditures that occur will be reported in September of 2019, and then eventually, in the distant future, in June of 2020, that will actually be published by TPI and reported to the federal government. And then I also have the information on, and again, this would be preliminary because this is only budgeted amounts, and eventually it's what the actual expenditures are that will be reported and published by DPI. But as expected, high school and middle school would spend more per student because they have programs that are more expensive to run. You have athletics, you have things like tech ed at the high school and at the middle school. Then I would also point out that when looking at Woodview's per pupil expenditures, that is higher than Kennedy, and in fact, it's also higher than the middle school. And that's a result of the housing of our early childhood program at Woodview, as well as the fact that we have our high need elementary students, special ed students at Woodview as well. So we have more teachers, special ed teachers, special ed aides at Woodview compared to Kennedy, and therefore they have more expenditures per student at that building. Are there any questions about this new requirement or some of the early pieces of information that we have regarding that?
Is this the first year of reporting?
Yes. The first year that we've had to do that, there was a lot of work over the summer at districts all across the state to restructure their accounting system to be able to report this data. A lot of districts did not report, for example, teacher salaries by building. There was nothing structurally that allowed them to do that. So ourselves, along with a lot of other districts, had to change the accounting structure so that we could actually report out in this way.
And our big number in the exclusion is referendum related.
Correct.
With a cash basis.
Yeah, that's exclusion. That's one of the standard ones. It would throw off reporting if you tried to compare schools in different districts. That would make a bit of a mess in trying to compare.
All right. Any additional questions? No action required here, right? Just for information.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. The 2019-20 budget calendar overview.
All right, so as we have provided every year, you have the budget development calendar for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Important dates of development are included in this, as we've included in the past. New in this year when compared to last year, I have some items that are in red to generally outline the function that will be occurring at the state level with regard to the next biennial budget. So I wanted to get this in front of you so that you had some of the important dates for getting our budget prepared for 2019-2020. Are there any questions on that?
I don't have a question. I may have talked to you about this in the past. A priority setting exercise that the board would embark upon to ensure that, as it relates to how we develop the budget, that the that minimally the board is aligned, or at least there's alignment between what the board believes is important and where and how the dollars are actually allocated within that budget. And I have found a tool that Whitefish Bay uses, and I think it probably wouldn't hurt for us to adopt something like this. So I can get a copy to you two, and perhaps you could, it's something that's done anonymously. I mean, they have a series of 16 different criteria. Each of the board members ranks them on a 1 to 16 basis. They get totaled, and there's no identification to who you are, but we kind of look for alignment in terms of, are we spending our dollars on the things that the board believes are most important? Or are we spending them in the order that the board sees them in the correct priorities? Just another link, and I'm 17 years on the board, I've never done this. So it just looked like a really good exercise to drive some linkage between the board and the budget. So I'd ask that we look at doing it this year.
Oh, you forward it on to us. Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it, so you're welcome to forward it on to us.
Yeah,
We'll take a look at it and give you some feedback.
Yeah, it's a simple exercise. I'll get it to you with the instructions, and then we can see how it shakes out for the board. All right. Any questions on the calendar? All right, then item F, 2019-20 school calendar.
And I should have got written draft on the calendar that was there. So there's no action being taken tonight, and I think I let the board know that in my update. But this is truly a work in progress. The administrative team has looked at this multiple times already. We've made some revisions. We surveyed parents and staff about multiple things this year for the calendar. One being Great Start conferences and thoughts for 2019-20. We had 238 parent responses, and 79.3 either recommended or recommended with changes, continuing them for the 19-20 school year. And for staff, 45 responses and 91.1% either recommended or recommended changes, continuing them for the 19-20 school year. So I met with Woodview's leadership team. I'm meeting with Kennedy's school-wide leadership team tomorrow morning. The idea of the December meeting was to put the data in front of them, which we've attached to this. They're to go back to their grade level teams and have discussions about what is the purpose of the Great Start conferences. We knew what it was as we started the year this year with moving from 3 schools to 2 years, 2 schools, bringing staff together, all those different things, not having time to unpack, all those things that aren't going to be an issue moving forward. And then we'll come back in that January time frame. I'll meet with them again at their January time and get feedback from them on the Great Start conferences, which do impact our calendar in that way. We also surveyed parents and staff on the potential of moving to a consistent spring break. So CISA 1 has looked at doing this, and districts in our area of saying, if we had a consistent spring break, how would that help us with various pieces where parents know for sure when spring break is each year. It does provide an even distribution of breaks throughout the school year. If there's a late Easter, typically our spring break has been attached to Easter. It has better timing with state assessments. ACT and advanced placement exams, those start the first week of May for AP, and so if you have a late spring break, that impacts the learning that can occur between spring break and coming back for that. Coordinated sports and extracurricular activities, it's hard for the spring break for various spring sports, and sometimes that's a good thing because it's bad spring weather, so you can't play anyways. Other years, it's good spring weather, and you'd like to be able to get those games in and not have them be doubled up towards the end or canceled in that way. And then it does give consistent spring breaks for families that maybe have kids in different districts in that way. So we had 131 staff members take that survey, 83.8 either supported or had no preference, and parents, we had 188 responded, 71.3 either supported or had no preference. So with those data points, we are bringing forward in this draft, and moving forward, we would be bringing forward a calendar that would have a consistent spring break for us moving forward. We would continue the tradition of having Martin Luther King Day off. And then so we also met with union leadership. We shared this for them to be able to take back and get some feedback from their leadership team to give us feedback on that. And you can see that some of the highlights of the calendar with 177 elementary student days, 178 secondary school days, 190 teacher days, and then it would vary based on grade level. So in this calendar here, Some of the feedback, if you read parents talking about at the elementary level with Great Start conferences, multiple parents commenting about struggling with getting care for their children when the middle school and high school are both in session, and how that was a difficult time for them to be able to do that. You also hear from the teacher perspective that after having Great Start conferences, the idea of having some time to reflect and meet with their team would have been very beneficial for them to be able to start the first day of school with that. So in this calendar, we would look at having Great Start conferences in that teacher professional development week during the week of the 26th, potentially the 28th, based on feedback from teachers that would go with that. And that would result in, if you look at the third being the first day of school for 6th grade and for 9th grade in the morning, and then 9th through 12th in the afternoon. And then on the 4th, we would have EC through grade 5, and then 7 and 8. So they would start on the 4th. So it's sort of a compromise. It gets less days for parents to deal with in that September deadline. It also gives a day for our staff to be able to collaborate, to look at data, be able to plan their class lists and work with their students before they have the kids in there, work across in their grade level, as well as with specials and so forth, to set up for a successful start to the year. And then you start going through the year, and we look at, we've intentionally looked at the October date. October 4th is Manufacturing Day, and we had a day off this year, which hindered us from being able to have our students take part in that day, so we've moved that to the 11th. A change in this calendar would be that in the past we've done conferences on 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, and then on Friday morning for 2 hours we've had conferences. In this calendar, we would not be having that Friday morning as conferences. We would have that as a day of school. We would look at comping our teachers for their work in conferences on November 27th. So although it says a professional development day, it would be no day of school, but that would be the day that we used to have off on the 25th of October. There's PD on the 4th. There is the winter break that would occur starting on the 23rd, going through the 1st, coming back on the 2nd. The end of the semester would be on the 17th, with grading and PD on the 20th, which is also Martin Luther King Day. Then we look at the 21st of February as a day off. March 6th is an early release. And then we have evening teacher conferences on the 18th and 19th, with the consistent spring break then occurring at the last full week of March. April, currently we have right now the 10th and the 13th off, and so it'd be a 4-day weekend. And then you have leading up to Memorial Day in May, which gets us the last student day on the 9th, which would have high school exams on the 5th, 8th, and 9th. Middle school, one of the discussions that we would be having is when they would have 8th grade promotion. That's something we'll be talking about again tomorrow at our district leadership team meeting, and then back again in January before we bring a full calendar to the board. But January's agenda, I think, is going to be pretty full. So we felt like getting this in front of you now, getting some feedback, questions, concerns, whatever you want us to look at, that we could be taking into effect as we discuss as an administrative team, as well as with our teachers. And we thought tonight would be a good opportunity to get some feedback.
Questions? Comments? Concerns?
So have you heard that other districts within CISA 1 are looking at that consistent spring break time?
We have. Yeah, there's a number of them that have. So if I look at Arrowhead, Brown Deer, Elmbrook, Franklin, Glendale, Greenfield. Greendale is doing it, but it's a little different because they have construction, referendum constructions. Hartford, Hamilton, Menominee Falls, Mequon, Thiensville. In our North Shore, go Nicolay. Port Washington is looking at it. Cedarburg, I know, is looking at it. West Bend does it. Whitefish Bay. So there's a number of schools that have moved to that area. It seemed to have stopped as you go south. A lot of those schools that I mentioned, South Milwaukee's on here, St. Francis, Waukesha, Wauwatosa, they've already implemented it. And when you got to Mequon, it sort of stopped, and now Mequon's taking it on. Cedarburg's looking at it, we're looking at it, Port Washington's looking at it as you're heading a little more north.
This state, the 23rd.
Yeah, yes, sir. Some variance has been on the April dates of having that Friday and that Monday, having both off. A lot of it impacts when you end school. is what that impacts. So some have moved away from, some have a Friday and Monday off, some just have a Friday off. But those are the districts that have looked at that consistent spring break.
And it's always, which week does that say that it's the?
The last full week of March. And there's a, CISA had written out that there's a time when that last full week of March doesn't, Easter comes with that, and I thought I had it in this folder. I do. So like in 2021, it's March 29th through April 5th, and in 2024, it's March 25th through April 1st. Otherwise, it would align well with that last full week of March. Because like Easter in 2021 is on April 4th, and on 2024, it's March 31st.
Are the number of days here consistent with the typical number of days in terms of, I know the 190 days sounds very familiar.
Yes, but we sort of fluctuated with that. Last year was a little different because we had less days because we had staff that had more things to do outside of the work day. But 177 and 178 are very similar to where we've been, and we've done an analysis of the days, and we have multiple days for snow. The high school is really the concern with minutes. It's not days anymore; it's minutes. So we have multiple days that are built into this calendar.
Just a couple of things, John. One, I'm glad that we're staying with the Great Star conferences. I thought attending one of those last year, I thought they were excellent. So I'm glad to see that we're going to stay with that. Two questions. One, I was able to schedule a convenient time for my conference. So 60% said yes, and 40% were 3 or below. Is that because of when they were offered, or because it was a sign up and maybe they signed up late? Was there any additional detail?
Yeah, so I would say yes to both of those. I think some were that there was multiple comments where parents commented that as a working parent, it was difficult for me to get a time slot, and whether that was because the time slot they wanted, because there was some time slots that were available after work hours, but there weren't as many, and so I'm sure it was a combination of those, which is one of the discussions that we've had. And we'll have with teachers what does that time frame look like then? Can we provide some more opportunities that go outside of that? That we look at the amount of time that it would take. I think that was one of the issues as well. So 45 minutes if you had multiple children, that was a more difficult thing for people who had multiple kids, and scheduling that and trying to get them scheduled in that way that would work with. I think that was a piece as well. So if they are 45 minutes each, if they're less, would that be easier for people to schedule? If we do less time, we didn't have any breaks built in for staff, which made it a difficult thing for staff as well. There wasn't a break built in for them. It was just nonstop throughout. So if we have less minutes, we can build some breaks in for them. So if you're running late, then you actually get caught up as well, but also give them a break. Because that was a couple of the comments, people saying, mine went long, and then the next one was, everything was offset.
I guess my one question is, in the last couple of years we've talked about the high school graduation. Did we ever poll the parents to see if staying on Sunday afternoon was, possibly a Saturday night or something? We kicked around a couple other things because it's been hot the last couple.
Really?
Did we ever get any feedback on that, or did we?
Not yet.
Okay.
So we certainly can. We'll do that as far as getting some additional feedback on what a Saturday would look like, or if they'd be willing to look at a different time on a Sunday, in the morning, for example. So I'm happy to go ahead and to do that to get some feedback from parents.
Great. We have the thinner black ones, the chairs, that helped.
Was there an option A? The document in the packet is option B.
There was. There was option A, there was option B, and there was option C. And a lot of them had similar characteristics. So because if you need to get so many days of school, it all depends on what are your priorities as you work across the thing. So, there was option A, there was option B, and there was option C. Administratively, there's a strong preference towards this calendar in some way, shape, or form. I believe there's still some movement that will occur with this calendar, or potential for it to occur, as we look at when quarter ends, when trimester ends, so for grading for staff or professional development for staff, whatever it may be. I guess I'm curious to hear from the board, is there a strong preference on that? The Friday the 10th and the Monday the 13th. That was one of the pieces that we talked about in our survey to staff, that we would look at that, or survey to parents and the staff, parents and staff. We had one calendar that got us out on the 5th. We had another calendar that got us out on the 10th. And no one liked the 10th. The 5th got a little tight. We'd have to cut 2 days, or you'd have to cut 1 day. If we cut 1 day, if we cut the 13th and then you cut a day of school for the high school, it would just make us, I think, would give us 1 snow day and some hours. So there's still time if we were to have a snow day. We haven't had a snow day in a while, that's you can do things like that. It just really comes down to a priority of what do you value, and needing some time for professional development during the year, as well as we also try to balance out when we have days off. So, when you got into this calendar this year, there was a couple times, and I'm seeing this as a parent myself, where it's like, didn't we just have a day off? And so we sort of, because of various grading times or this or that, it was like a Friday and then maybe 2 weeks later another Friday or a Monday off. So we've also tried being cognizant of when these days off are, but some of them are driven by the fact that secondary is on quarters and elementary is on trimesters.
Now, I like what you're doing and what others have done with the spring break and the typical Friday, Monday around Easter. I think setting certain expectations there, so long as, from an educational perspective, we believe this isn't going too long. This is, we're still getting out at a good time.
Sure.
So I'm in favor of what I see here. Other thoughts?
No, I think it works out really well this year, with for the upcoming school year with the spring break and everything, and that April, it would depend when Easter fell, because I know in some years it's been then like you go all of April and most, all the way through May until Memorial Day without a break, and that is a long stretch for families and for the kids, I think. Without, you've had a lot of days off initially in the beginning of the year, and then I know it's good for the high school because you're getting, AP exams and other stuff, but I can remember as an elementary school, being like, oh my gosh, these kids could use like a day of not.
And that'll be, you're exactly right. And so 2021, when Easter Sunday falls on April 4th, with spring break probably running March 29th through April 5th, there'll be an opportunity to probably build something in at some point to have, because that will be a stretch.
When are most of the AP exams?
The first 2 weeks in May.
Yes, I think we've talked about that too, that those AP exams are kind of the emphasis of those classes, and then if we're going to May through June 9th, that's a long stretch of it.
Sure. Another reason for us to advocate for local control of the calendar, starting earlier, right? Because that would give the board flexibility. You could say, well, why aren't you starting on this date? If this happens, why isn't this happening? But we don't have that local control yet. But that would be another reason to advocate for that with our representatives.
So this calendar then does have us having classes during the April election?
It does. It does right now, yes.
So that'd be the 7th.
Is that because it's not a midterm or a presidential?
Yes, as of now. Yes, that's correct. That's what I have down right now. Okay. That would go with that, yep.
Any other feedback to provide for administration? On the right track? Something can be supported?
Okay. So we'll bring back, we're meeting again, as I said, we're meeting again this week. Then I'm meeting with teachers again, both tomorrow, and then I'll meet with both teams again next month before we come back with a final recommended calendar at the next board meeting.
All right. Good, thank you. All right. Item G, Rule 830, guidelines for implementing public use of facilities. How do we want to take this?
I can start and then hand it off to Jeff. So, as the board is aware, we've been reviewing this policy for about 5 or 6 months, and have looked at multiple different areas of the current policy to try to figure out how we proceed with the new policy. So that's gone from the categories of the groups. So we've identified 4 categories. Doing an evaluation of who is using our facilities, how much the facilities are being used, and when they're being used. Comparing what is in our current policy to the other area school districts to see where we're off, where we're in the line, and ultimately try to get back in line, as well as trying to make sure that we're keeping a lot of the relationships through changing our policy that we currently have with our youth feeder programs into our high school programs. So just met with high school varsity coaches, youth programs that help support our program. We want to keep those high school programs, keep that all in place and not have this necessarily be a complete deterrent to that. So obviously a lot of work. It's a big policy as it impacts a lot of people. The goal is to have our facilities available for people to use and to have access to them. So what we're looking for tonight through a first reading is to present this to the board. Jeff will go through some of the detail actually in the policy, what we've added. And we're just looking for some feedback from the board, from the community, so that we can go back and make sure that it's clear, it's something that we can move forward with and be consistent with. So with that, Jeff can kind of go through the makeup of what is in the policy, field some questions, and then I can do a timeline of how we'd like to proceed with it through the policy committee.
Yes, so Mr. Dunn is correct. We started, I asked Kara, it seems like we talked about this for a long time, and she reviewed it for me. We reviewed this on 6/11, 7/9, 8/20, 9/17, 11/12, and 12/10. So we have been going at this for quite some time. And we've done, I think, pretty thorough process of looking at a ton of different districts. We looked at North Shore districts, looked at all the districts in the North Shore. How do they handle their facility usage policies? We broke it down then into the North Shore Conference, just looking at what is Port Washington, what is Mequon, what is Cedarburg, how do they use their policies before finalizing our costs. And when we looked at that, we really tried taking the lowest out of the ones that we looked at to put in to our various areas. We've added a stipulation if a team makes a donation that is approved by the board, that donation covers their facility, their rental fees that would go with that. We've shared, various pieces in number 3 where it's under B, 3B, and I have track changes on mine, and I think ours up there doesn't have track changes, but we have that.
There's both are in there.
Oh, is there?
I can
Okay.
open up the other.
Yeah, when you go to the track changes one, that'd be great. So we've also kept track of our track changes, so people are able to see this is what was in the policy, this is what's being suggested in that way. So it's not somebody have to look at both policies side by side and try and look for a word or something like that. Because in 3, under B3, we did add a district custodian or an employee. We do have district employees who, when we think of employee, we aren't talking about someone who's coaching one of our middle school or high school teams. We're talking about someone who is coaching a youth team. So it could be an employee in that way. So when we talk about custodians being available during those times, that isn't limiting our middle school or high school teams from practicing. It may limit youth sports or other outside organizations who may or may not have a district employee, may have someone else who's their coach that would go with it. We had a basketball game here on Saturday night, and that doesn't cost more money because that's a school sponsored activity, a district sponsored activity. So when Steve talks about the different categories, we've broken it down. It keeps that in place. So you can see the language has been added with custodial availabilities. People can see that. Not a lot of changes till you get to group 1, talking about various pieces that go with groups B and C will only be charged custodial fees if an event occurs outside of the regular custodial hours. And then we looked at adding some of the rental fee schedules that went with some of those pieces. So we've talked about it a number of times. We've gone back and forth in various areas, and I think we're getting close to having something in place for the board to consider. And this is an opportunity to get some feedback. Steve, you want to follow up with the process?
Yeah. So tonight, we're just looking for if anybody has any feedback. So we know that, we presented this, and because of Christmas, we had this meeting up a week sooner. We presented this at the policy committee on last week, Monday. So we, at the conclusion of that, Jeff had just mentioned, if there's any questions to follow up. So we thought we would use this meeting for that follow-up. And then the next steps of this will be by January 7th, we're just looking for all of the feedback or comments or concerns. And we can evaluate that prior to our January 14th meeting. And we will use the 14th policy meeting to review all of that and make sure that all the feedback that we've heard, that we've addressed, or at least investigated, and then to bring this policy back on January 28th for a second reading and hopefully a voting policy.
Yeah, and just for the audience, and by way of how this works, I guess Jeff rattled off a number of dates that the policy committee meets, and that's where the work gets done, as we look at the information that is needed to assess any changes in the policy, what our neighbors are doing, what we believe is best practice. That work gets done at the policy committee. The policy committee then advances it to the board for consideration. I think policies of this magnitude and all of the work that we're doing with Neola and beyond, that first read is an opportunity for the community to hear about this policy and then provide any input that they might have, and for the board to also reflect on community input as well prior to moving to that second read, on which we'd look for the board to approve this. So we're trying to make sure that this remains transparent, make sure that the work stays in the right place, which is at that committee level, and that we have a good, solid policy that's well known, well documented, and well understood. Right? So that's where we're at right now, this first read. And I would say that this first read is as the document is written, so it's entered as our first read. We don't have to read it out loud, but that is the first read for the board consideration here. So any questions at this point, comments, concerns?
One thing I've mentioned to Jeff earlier, and I still think it might be worth looking at, is some kind of half-day, full-day, weekend type thing. And I know we added the language for this flat fee type thing, and I want to make it so it's easier for Jeff and the district to adhere to. I don't want kind of wishy-washy, well, this is what it is, but we're doing this. And I think it might be worthwhile looking at that. I mean, I come from a baseball background with the Little League, and they're going to use those fields on a weekend at $22 an hour for a varsity baseball field. It becomes very expensive. And just something to think about. I think the same could be said for basketball and the use of the gyms. Right now it's laid out as courts, and like the other weekend there was a youth tournament, and it's going to be several courts, as I've been involved in those too. There's going to be several courts that they're going to need. And at $8 an hour, that too gets to be pretty expensive. So I think it's just something I've thought about a lot, and I think it'd be worthwhile looking at. Is there a way to do some of that? I looked at like our village rentals, and they'll rent things by the day or the weekend also, so that's kind of where I got that from, is can we do something like that? I don't know.
If you're holding the tournament, is it for profit, or is Little League, for example, making a profit off of it? Is it like where you're
the Little League doesn't host many tournaments. They probably want to use the field for a Saturday, and you want to use it for 3-4 games, but those 3-4 games could take 8 hours to get those games. I mean, it's not going to be an hour game. You're talking at least probably an hour and a half, 2 hours for a game, because those are older kids. So you're talking several hours for that given Saturday. So, yeah, I think it would be probably more the youth traveling team that would look at tournaments?
If you're looking at a basketball tournament, for example, in your gym, obviously the money raised goes to the youth program. It doesn't go to pay anyone. Any parent is volunteering that free of charge. What ends up happening is what you might see in your gym, the scoreboard. A portion of the cost of that scoreboard was donated by the Grafton Basketball Club. They'll donate basketballs. They will donate to, the varsity teams. Last year the varsity team went, and played a tournament up at Just a Game Fieldhouse. There was a donation from the basketball club to help offset the cost of that. If you needed a new rebounding machine, you would have the youth programs donating money specifically to help with that equipment. And so there's a little bit of a conflict if we're donating money to buy, say, a rebounding machine. Now you're going to charge me to use said rebounding machine, where I've just donated the money to pay for the rebounding machine. And I guess my bigger concern is just the limited hours. Knowing that I can go to Cedarburg and they have a 6-7 week summer league, basketball that starts at 5 o'clock. It gets over about 9:30, and that's Monday through Thursday. And they do that for 6 weeks. I can go to Homestead, and as I mentioned in my comment, my daughter spent more hours training at Homestead this past summer than she did in this gym. And she was there at 7 o'clock in the morning. She was there at 8 to 10 o'clock at night. She was there every day of the week during the summer. And I find that shameful that your leading scorer for basketball had to train at your competitor's gym. And I think as adults, as parents, as administrators, as supporters to our students, should look at that and go, why is that? And what we're saying in this first read is you're not going to provide any hours Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Well,
during the summer.
Right, to that point.
For free. So for outside organizations. So if your daughter practiced at Cedarburg or at Homestead, she paid money to practice there. Right?
And
someone paid money. I know. I'm making sure the board knows that.
I don't mind if you're going to charge them.
And this summer is a little different because of construction costs.
According to this read, and I was here last week and I asked specifically, will you have any availability during the weekend? And the answer was no.
Well,
the answer was they wouldn't be available to rent.
Well, I just want to make sure that in item 3, where we add a district custodian or employee, does that negate or alleviate the concerns relative to custodial availability under 5B?
I was just going to ask, what is the cost then? Because it just says per 3 would be that a custodian just has to open and close.
Right.
They don't have to be there the whole time. And I would assume a district employee, someone has to be with the kid, someone has to be supervising.
Right. But when we say district employee, I guess I'm also looking for clarification. If you are a high school athlete, the WIA prevents varsity coaches from interacting with their varsity students, but only on specific, like our varsity basketball coach has 5 contact days throughout the summer. That's it. So I don't want to try to solve a problem by creating an issue that could get that varsity coach or that varsity team in hot water by saying, well, is it the assistant coach that can be considered, is it a volunteer coach that can be considered a district employee? There was just some ambiguity that wasn't clear, and as I said before, we said you couldn't use the facilities, but Mark's saying, hey, I can use the baseball field and the softball field. Well, isn't that considered the facilities? I'm just trying to understand what all it was.
I guess, is that the intention of the policy as it's drafted now?
Open gyms that are run by the head coach or by the coach are not part of this piece. The 5 contact days in the summer would be pieces that the coach would pick those days and would utilize those. Those are district-sponsored activities that are occurring that really are on a different. That's in a different category. That's in a different category. So, we aren't going to say that the baseball team can't play on Friday because we don't have a custodian at that point. Like they have a game that day, or if it goes late, or whatever it may be. You can use any sport you want, I guess. Soccer could be in one of those examples, I guess, depending on how far you go into the summer when our school year ends. All those pieces. So, what it's trying to do is make sure that we have a clear understanding for administration to be able to fairly and easily work with groups to say, this is what it costs to use our facilities. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you went to Cedarburg, or you went to Mequon, or you went to Homestead, like, this is what they charged you. They didn't make a deal with you. Like, this is what it charged. And then that group passed that cost on to those athletes, which, when the more access, the more usage we have in our facility, the quicker those facilities need to get updated. So when the floor needs to be waxed, or when the floorboards need to be redone, let's use basketball as an example. You can use any sport, replace grass for boards. Who's paying for that? District taxpayers are paying for that. That's coming out of the district budget. We aren't saying, hey, this is what it costs. It costs $50,000. It's similar to parking. Why do we have parking? Well, because there's a cost that goes with us to stripe, to plow, and to refinish the parking lot. Those are all extra things for students. So we aren't trying to limit usage, but we are trying to make sure that we are wise stewards of our district district funds, and we keep our facilities at a high level. And as we looked at the different communities, we are the only ones who weren't charging for usage of those facilities, and our facilities compared to those other 2 districts are not superior to theirs.
And that's what I was curious about. Homestead's got the field house.
Yeah, well, there's twice as many kids, but yeah.
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 There is a pretty big difference in facilities there. Between at least those 2 schools.
Yeah, they have more kids, but it's the philosophy of what we tried looking at is what's the philosophy, what's fair, what are our neighboring, so if I play for, junior Blackhawks versus, junior Highlander or whatever it is, like what is the cost that those students are incurring versus what our students are incurring that are going towards those pieces?
But I just want to go back. Nothing in this policy restricts access to these facilities. Is that a correct statement? So in other words, if somebody approached you, a club approached you for hosting a summer basketball league here that happened to run from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.,
there would be a cost. That's right. There'd be a cost because that's not available during the time.
But nothing in this policy would preclude that from happening. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay.
If the gym space is available. And right now,
but I'm talking about the
you build it and they will come right now. I mean, our gyms are full. Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, nothing in this policy
Jamie would work
right
with his
now.
custodial staff to say, this is what we need. And those costs would be offsetting our custodians working overtime or us having someone work part-time to cover those pieces.
Absolutely. But there would be nothing.
Because there would be a cost, because during the day, there's jobs that they're doing.
That's how I understood this.
That's correct.
Nothing in here restricted that access or curtailed that access. The access is there. The demand for that program within our facilities, it would seem to me, isn't there. I mean, there's demand. That demand has always been at Homestead. That demand, always, I can't say always, as long as my kids have been playing basketball, it's a long time. That demand was there in Cedarburg, and that demand was there in Homestead. I don't believe that demand was here in Grafton. Not to say that it shouldn't be, or that we couldn't find a way to develop that here. But nothing in this policy would restrict the utilization of those facilities on a summer night from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., hypothetically.
And I think for those organizations that are already contributing, as you said, if they're already donating stuff, these fees would pretty much be eliminated because they get credited for their donations.
That's right, and that was the idea of the committee when you looked at this, was to say, you aren't going to get both. You can't have a youth group say, you know, hey, we want to make a donation to the team, but then we also have to pay fees. Well, then like that's not the kind of money they have, because you are being run by volunteers. So it is sort of does them, as I said, the community, them contributing to the team doesn't really help us offset the cost of waxing or refinishing or mowing or replacing fencing or whatever it may be, but it helps our student athletes, which then doesn't rely on other district dollars to go to help our student athletes have experiences, and then we allocate our dollars in that way. Sorry.
I don't know if we've, kind of to Mark's point, at least with basketball, it seems to make more sense to me to look at a gym basis versus court. Most of our gyms don't have the divider anyway. I mean, is it realistic that both elementary schools have no divider? Right. So it's not like we're going to have volleyball on one court and basketball on the other court. Right? So renting it out by the gym.
So if you look, not to interrupt you, but if you stick with that thought, if you look on page 6, we only say the competition gym has 2 courts at the high school, and we say the auxiliary gym at the high school has 2 courts, because that does have a divider. We say the elementary gym only counts as 1, even though it's two courts, we only count that as 1. And John Long, we say per court, because that does have a divider in the bigger gym. So, and as we looked at what everyone else, and just because everyone else does it doesn't mean we have to do it, right? I mean, like, no one else does whatever it may be. That doesn't matter. Like, what do we want the Grafton policy to look like? But everyone else does break it down by court, because you are able to. But the ones that we didn't have a divider for, we didn't say it was fair either. That makes sense. But you can get more than one team in the high school gym. You can easily get more than one team in the auxiliary gym.
One thing that seems a little, maybe potentially problematic, is the flat fee agreement for groups with historically demonstrated regular substantial use of district facilities. At least it's, you know, arbitrary or vague as to what, you know, is this, those groups would be, I would think, gladiators, basketball, Little League, unless I'm
Village. Heavy users who've demonstrated, who have demonstrated historical time that they've utilized our facilities. I mean, so the problem is, it's like, it'd be very hard for a Little League, in a sense, to say, well, you know, we think, and the purpose of the spirit of the policy is not to say, well, you know, we're going to guess that it takes an hour and a half for a Little League game, but it takes longer. Well, then, you know, you went 30 extra minutes, so you actually owe us more money. I mean, like you're trying to figure, it is a hard thing to say, here's the end to it, or something goes into overtime. Like, well, like, that's not really the purpose. But it is to have a general understanding so that they can do their fees. And the reason why the committee, to sort of go back to this, the reason why we started in June was because when Steve and I were talking about this, we believed that this would be a long-term discussion. I'm not sure I envisioned. You know, I'm hoping that next December we aren't still talking about this, but as I mentioned earlier, but the idea was that we would have something, discussion at the December board meeting, so that no later than the January board meeting. I think, Carrie, that was your recommendation. We go back a couple months, so that we would be able to work with these different groups to sort of meet with them and say, this is the new policy. How does this impact you? So they're not setting. So when they're looking at setting their fees or fundraising, that there's months in advance of doing that. This isn't like we're doing this and now starting in January the fee structure has changed for you. This is not. This is for that July 2019 discussion moving forward.
But as it came up at the policy meeting, if, say, Grafton, the basketball club, comes and says, here's the number of hours we need in the gyms, there's the fee schedule, we have that number. Now, if it's something takes an extra half hour here and there, that's where you're talking about, not here and there. But it's not necessarily it's a substantially lower, we're still going up.
In my mind, this was not to be discounted. I haven't heard that. And if the board would like us to consider that, that's fine. But in my mind, this is not to be, and I expressed that at the committee meeting, this isn't going to be like, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Like, that puts me in a really bad spot, and
No,
I don't even really want to be doing this. Like,
That's why I
I'm not sure
worry
this is
about
the
that
best use of my
language.
time.
If that's if that was the intent of that, then I would say we need to consider lowering the fee, but stick to the schedule. Or, to take it out of, to avoid that very issue.
And we also don't want to be gouging our
Right.
youth sports either. I mean, we can look at that. We can look at the half day, full day, and we can look at the village. I can look to see what the village has. There's written down that, I'm sure, so we can pull that and
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I mean, a full day of a baseball field could be varsity.
And whatever it is, I agree with, I'd be more comfortable with having, well, then make the fee this much lower to accommodate that rather than, well, they get a special deal and then they get a deal and, well, then why have this? Because that would make up most of group 2 or whatever,
Yeah, I think those are the special discussions or arrangements would be those group 2 items for our youth theater programs. But I don't want to put Jeff in this, negotiation process. That's why I'm asking.
right. And we don't want that because we don't need one group looking at another group, and maybe my kid's involved with one of the groups, and it looks like I'm playing favorites because my kid's in that group, my kid's not in the other group. I mean, like.
But yet each one is different.
Correct.
You got a football
That's correct.
field, you got
That's correct.
you got gyms, you got baseball. I mean, they're all.
Some of them have some of their own facilities. Some of them are going to rely totally on us.
Right, but absent the development of a half-day rate or a full-day rate or a weekend rate, I think the plain language of our policy should eliminate wherever possible that ambiguity. So I would suggest that perhaps in the front of that sentence, for administrative simplicity only, the district may implement a flat fee arrangement. To take out any suggestion that this is a discounted rate. We're only doing this for simplicity. We're not going to sit here and say, well, that game went into extra innings, so now you owe us for an extra 45 minutes. Or, you finished 45 minutes early. I mean, our language, in my mind, should minimize whenever possible that ambiguity. And it seems like the wording that's there now suggests some ambiguity. Whether we come up with a half-day rate, full-day rate, a weekend rate, fine. But whatever our rates are, and even to the courts. I mean, if you're renting a gym that has 2 courts, take the $8 and multiply it by 2. That's the cost. It's relatively simple.
I think simplifying is one of those key. I mean, you take baseball. I mean, you get a weekend and it's rainouts. We don't want to go back and say, okay, well, I was supposed to have 6 hours, so now I got 6 hours coming back here, and we don't want it to obviously be an accounting nightmare, doing a lot of that administrative work as you're mentioning. I think it's just understanding what is that time period. It's from here to here. This is what we need. These are the amount of teams. These are the amount of games. And that's how it's calculated through all of that to make it something that is the facilities available. It's accounted for, and it's there's a clear agreement. And there's so many other things that are in there too. Field maintenance and those kinds of things that come into it. That some of it always is not a true hard dollar cost, but there's effort that has to go into it, and if we don't have to do it, that should be considered. If we are asked to do it, that should be considered as well. So I think those are the discussions that we would have to have after we get this approved, so people aren't just seeing a number and we're understanding what that is, because fields are going to be different than the baseball fields, they're going to be different than the gyms, which are going to be different than something else.
Anything else? So then, to ensure that we stay on track here, I've only heard that additional work needs to be centered around the consideration of a half-day or a full-day rate or a weekend rate, correct? Mm-hmm. That we would look perhaps to consider some strengthening the wording to take out any ambiguity relative to the implementation of a flat fee that suggests that it's for administrative simplicity only. Mm-hmm. Those are the only 2 things. Is the language clear? I want to go back to your...
I guess in reading this and in the meeting we had last week, it was not made clear to me at all that the facility during the summer, the gym, I'll be very specific, that the gym
would be available in the evening hours or on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Very specifically, which is why I came back and I commented on that. And I specifically point blank asked, would I be able to host a basketball tournament in the gym in July on a weekend? And the answer was no. Now, we can discuss fees, whether you have to rent you have to have a custodian, you have to have a district employee. But when I asked point blank that question, the answer I received was no, you could not. So I want to make sure that whatever policy you write, that is listed that you are available after 4 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. You are available all day Friday. You are available all day Saturday, and you are available all day Sunday. You may need to, as a group, hire your own custodian. You need to have this person there, whether it's a district employee or a varsity coach, what have you, but you need to take away that confusion. Because I left last week thinking that there was no availability for anyone except Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 4. And my comments earlier this evening reflected that. And most of you were here last week. That was a very poignant question that I asked.
It was.
And it was a different answer that I received last week than tonight.
Well, I don't recall it being a different answer.
It was a different answer, which is why I came back this week.
I recall it. The confusion for me is as 3 relates to 5 in the policy. That's. I think we need to clarify that, because 5 seems to suggest custodial availability, right? And 3 seems to suggest that because of the provision of or employee, that there doesn't have to be a custodian available, right?
Correct.
And then I'd even point it to nothing. The table on page 6 makes reference to a weekend rate for a custodian. Is that limited to exclude summer?
No, there's not a timeline that goes with that.
Okay.
I mean, perhaps I misinterpreted your question when you asked before, in all honesty, but I think one of the things that we've struggled with throughout the last 6 months, and maybe I'll just say me, I won't speak for anyone else, but we've tried to balance what it's been versus where it's been, what's occurring elsewhere, and what do we want ours to be. So when we talk about us, is us the high school basketball team, or is us the Grafton Junior Blackhawks? Or is that insert blank, insert any traveling team that would be made up of whoever. So all of those pieces. And in the past, because everyone's had keys, then they've been able to access various facilities, whether they've checked it out or not. With the movement of our enhanced security and fobs and not passing out keys, except to district employees, that is allowing us to better track the usage of our facilities and making sure that our facilities are locked up, they aren't susceptible to vandalism, so that something is unlocked and someone is able to get in and get to the pool and do something or do whatever. And if that happens, we're now able to see with our security cameras as well as with our fobs who has entered that facility, which will help us moving forward. And it's hard in 3, 4, and 5 because we are trying to make it as cost effective as possible. So we've built in some of these various if this or this, and it's probably hard to, maybe we should have more language, make the policy longer and script a lot of those pieces out.
Well, and I think perhaps, right. I think perhaps the confusion at the policy committee that you heard, as I reflect on it now, is access is available, but it's not without cost. Right.
And after, Superintendent Nelson is correct. My daughter did not go to Homestead for free.
Right.
We paid for the services there.
Yep.
As I mentioned, my interpretation of the question that I asked last week was, this facility was not going to be available to students during the summer. And that is where I commented that, you know, if her trainer is training out of Homestead, because he has a deal with the Homestead Athletic Department and that school board to say, hey, you've got a field house, I can take one of your gyms and I can run my training program all day long, and my clients come in and out, and I'm charging them, and then I'm paying you a fee. I understand that. My confusion was just bluntly not being accessible, and whether it's accessible to the varsity team, which will be in a different group than a youth team. You know, my concern was just having facilities available for any of these groups that want to use them, provided they're open on the calendar.
Yeah, maybe to clarify that point number 5, those are kind of the regular hours of the custodians. Is that what we're saying in that?
Sure. I think I have a good understanding, in all honesty. I think we've heard enough.
That, yeah, that's when you're
Like
not
with
having to
Steve.
pay the
To pay the
custodial fee.
If you wanted to get one gym, or the varsity, the high school gym, 2 courts for an hour, $16. If it's outside of these times, then you pay the custodian. If it's in this time, something's already there. But you're still paying
The fees.
Right.
But we aren't going to double charge you to have
Yeah.
we already have a
For somebody
custodian here. Right. So I think we've heard good feedback.
Okay.
And I think we can come, I think Steve had said earlier, what I heard was that January 7th, if there's other feedback, to let us know before then, so that him and I could meet before the policy committee on the 14th, so we be as efficient as possible with our time on this policy.
This clarity is what we're looking for, so that we can put this into place. So, thank you. And anything else, please send it to Jeff or I, and we'll make sure that we have that policy committee on the 14th.
All right, thank you. Construction updates.
Jamie is out ill, so that's why he is not here to share that. So just a couple things. Our lockers installation at the elementary schools have been delayed. You know, we were hoping that they were going to be earlier in November, then we were hoping there would be a winter break, and now it's into that January time frame. So they've been delayed by 2 weeks. He says January. I don't have a firm number. He's still trying to get that. He's been in contact with the manufacturer, speaking to them. We know they're being manufactured. We know they're being shipped here. We are getting ready at both Woodview and Kennedy to take the hooks down. We're waiting to do that, because then once that happens, then there needs to be an alternate location for that. And then the lockers, once they will be installing the lockers, and as the lockers installed, then whatever grade level or class is assigned to that those lockers will be able to take that on. But that has been a delay that's come along. Next week we will be capping off the water main south of Highway 60. So that's a piece that is a finished product from the demolition of GES and moving forward. District office will also be finished in the next couple weeks. That continues to advance along the completion scale of, it was supposed to be done earlier, and so now we're going probably into January before we have the new office open in that area.
Question, sorry.
Yes, sir.
About that?
Yep.
Do we have to close Highway 60, or are they able to cap it across?
I believe they're able to close it across. That was the big discussion. They met with Amber the other day at the village.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a full closure both ways.
They didn't. I believe they did not. They worked with. There was a couple different options they looked at to be able to do, so not have that occur. And then next week there's going to be a ton of contractors in the district completing the punch list. So they've been working through the punch list at both Kennedy and Woodview, as well as at the high school. There's still more things at the high school on the punch list than other areas. I was talking to Craig earlier, though, before the meeting. Kennedy today, there was a number of punch lists. I saw his email that probably had 10 things that they went through and sort of hit off, with even getting access to the 2nd through 5th grade. The new playground equipment, they've put some plywood down so you can get to that, which will help when it's blacktop only. So even constructing that, he was working with Joe today to get that going. So we're, the punch list is ongoing, but getting through some of those pieces and prioritizing that punch list as well. So there's going to be a ton of that. And then from that point on, there really won't be any work occurring until spring. So at that point, Hoffman's already moved their trailer. They've been using some of Jamie's maintenance area as their sort of working space, and they'll be coming back in the spring when the weather warms up to finalize some of the landscaping things we have at all of our facilities, whether it's even at John Long or at Kennedy, Woodview, or at the high school, as well as the asphalt and things of that nature that will occur. They're moving dirt, but there's nothing down for seed or anything like that. That'll be occurring in the spring, unless we continue to have it in the 40s. We had that really good weather, and then we had really, really bad weather. It'd have been great if we'd have continued with the 40s, but that's an update that he had of all the pieces that are occurring in that way.
All right, any questions? All right, then the Board of Education will entertain a motion to convene into closed session to consider 1, a parent request involving social and personal history, and 2, deliberation or negotiation of the purchasing of public properties. This is in accordance with Wisconsin State Statutes 1985, 1E, and F. Such a motion. Second. Okay, John, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And yes.